Iowa State, Ulrich Museum, Arizona State University, Penn State, I don't know, Columbus. There was a museum in Columbus. I can't remember what the name of that was.
And what are the pieces selling for now?
Oh, that package originally sold in its entirety to an oil company in Colorado Springs. Arizona State wanted to buy it, but they could not find a benefactor at that time. They wanted the entire package, and so did this university or a museum in Ohio. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it sold here, and I can't remember what the original selling price was, $79,000 or something, or $80,000, and it just resold for $125,000 in its entirety. And people are keeping it as a unit, which is real nice.
Was it expressing a specific tribe?
No, it wasn't. This began, and I might as well relate some of this right now. This began a search for, it was a kind of spirituality that I'm involved in, that I feel very strongly about. I relate, the reason I do Indian subjects is and people say it's Indian subjects, but if you really know my work, they're really not so much Indian as they are, a spiritual thing. It's far beyond that. I do not paint Indians as objects. I'm not interested in all the vestiges or any of the other things strictly for that. The people that I do could just as well be people from anywhere in the world. Basically, I paint man in his spirituality. Much of the things that you see represent a kind of transition from man as a physical being in this physical shell to a spiritual thing. The Navajos believe, for instance, that we are currently in a fifth world. The fifth world being one of our physical being as we are seen, walking, talking, and so on, existing as physical beings. The sixth world being an involvement into a spiritual existence, and whether you take that as being a kind of parable or very literal really doesn't matter. The idea being is that we evolve to this level of spirituality where we exist in a very ethereal and intense and real way, in unity in harmony with all things.
So do you believe that man and everything that is with man, as far, because I'll see you put feathers and birds and pieces of maybe fiber or living things. So what you're saying is that the movement to be spiritually involved involves also man, but all the things that are created on earth.
All things.
Yeah. And do you believe that those things are already are aware of that sixth world?
Yeah, they exist.
That spiritual, they're in that already.
That's why, this painting that was passed around, this red painting, I'll get into that painting, but I believe, I do not read about Indians. I do not spend time studying anything about, their vestiges or anything else. These things come in an entirely different way, and it's very fascinating. I really hate to get into these things because it starts sounding a little bit hocus pocus, but it does happen that I think that if you really let yourself go and you get in tune with things, and you can open these doors to the subconscious, and they open however briefly they do open, and you look in and you can see, and you begin to understand all kinds of things about how these people felt. And then in that case, then people don't become Indian or black or anything else. They become people, all in this air, all in this ethereal state. And you begin to understand things and know of things that you really had no previous knowledge of. And I truly believe that. This information comes to you. I put this painting together, for instance, I just started painting it in the way I do. I do not make drawings for paintings. I do not do any kind of preliminary paintings or anything else. I just begin on the canvas, and it comes to me in a color or in a shape or some way. It comes to me, and it's always different. And it just I believe a lot like Michelangelo when he'd say, it's in the bronze or in the granite, the marble. It's there, and you look at it, and I believe that about a canvas. You know, I will sit hours and hours, days in front of a blank canvas, and it emerges somehow, and maybe it's all kinds of things that happen, but it comes out of that.
Frank, I want to go back to your imagery just for a second. Since you predominantly use Native American or Indian imagery, how do the Native Americans respond to your art?
Very well.
What?
Of all of the Indian artists that they know, the response of the people I get is that I most closely touch this element of the spirituality. You know, there are people they like for how they portray them and so on, and people that they just don't like at all. But in terms, they seem to relate to the spiritual thing more than anything else. I have a box in a locked cabinet that is loaded with, and I have all kinds of little gifts and eagle feathers that have been sent to me from all over the United States. An eagle feather, you know, is representative. That's kind of a very high form of compliment when you get that, and you know, it's traditional. And the people that are very traditional in their thought, Native Americans, seem to relate to my work very well. And I'm sure there are those people that it offends. I'm not saying that I'm universally accepted by Native Americans, because there are different points of view.
I missed something on the sixth world as the world into which we evolved. That's what the novel believes. Could you spend just a little bit of time on that?
Okay, yeah, we evolved to this sixth level in their thinking and also in my thinking. And it's, you know, it really doesn't matter whether it's a parable or, you know, an idea, or whether it's really true. But the sixth world is one of the spiritual existence, one where we exist on a much higher plane as people. And that's a plane where we are in tune with all things in a very harmonious way.
Have you studied or read like that Oriental philosophy?
Some.
Or did that
Yes.
influence your images?
Oh yes. I've studied a lot of philosophy. I've taught philosophy at various levels. But yes, it does. But the interesting thing is, and the reason why this is so vital, and I believe so very, very important, is that this is neither a religion or a philosophy. It defies the, you know, strict definitions of either, as all, you know, really important beliefs or ideas of man do. You'll find that, you know, the interesting thing is I wanted to do a series of works on this whole concept of Genesis. Well, despite, you know, differences in ideas from various you know, formal or structured religions and ideas around the world, the concepts of the Genesis, whether it be from the Aborigines of Australia, American Indians, or Christianity, is basically the same. Very much the same. There are all kinds of little variations and colors on the thing, and slightly different approaches from here and there. For instance, you know, primitive, the Anastasi believed that man evolved from the earth, from the tree of life, and out of the earth grew this tree, and a maiden climbed to the top of this tree and was impregnated by the sun, thus beginning man on earth. Common beliefs is, of course, that the powers came from above. In terms of Christianity, all powers came from the sky, but it doesn't really matter about how that evolved. It's still there. The tree of life, in all of these things, begin to overlap, because our Christmas tree is really a symbol of the same kinds of things as that center post that was always in the primitive villages. It's still a tree. The Christmas tree. In all religions, there's the concept of the tree, which has to do with the Genesis. Even in Christianity, the idea of the Garden of Eden and the tree. The whole thing is all tied together. This all runs throughout, you know, all forms of religions and or philosophical concepts about the Genesis. Basically, I'm involved with that, and you know, many of the things I talk about in my work, or I relate to my work, has to do with this idea of whispers or of the wind. The wind also is a very important concept to writers, philosophers, artists. On the winds come all kinds of ideas, all kinds of concepts that relate from the fathers, and from the fathers, you mean not your father or your father's father, but the fathers, the people of the beginning, way back. And these are messages that are carried on the air, and I truly believe that you can be in tune with those things if you allow yourself to be in tune and to be harmonious with that. And I'm not saying I exist in that plane all the time. That would be absolutely foolish. I truly believe that these days you can only be in tune with that on a very brief level, very brief moment. And it's like, the doors of the subconscious open. When you get so involved with your work, there are times when I'm painting along in the sky or in an area, and all of a sudden I sense, this is going to sound like a meeting with born-again Christians, but this is difficult to talk about. All of a sudden I'll be painting along, and all of a sudden I truly sense God, if you will, but God in a very big way, okay? It's like something is there, and I sort of see into things, and all kinds of things happen to me, ideas, and then all of a sudden, it's just like this sudden closing, and it just kind of breaks up everything. And that's fortunate, because we couldn't deal in that level, of course, because you'd be insane. You just could not exist within there. You couldn't cope with all the things that come and go inside of there. So then what the artist does, whether it be writer, painter, or whatever, looks back into that, and what he sees then is after image, or what he understands is all of the ramifications of that brief moment.
Okay. Inside, really.
Yeah.
Getting in touch
And you
with
go
the
back and you try to remember, you try to recall as much as you can do.
Isn't that the right side, though?
Well,
the
sure.
intuitive,
That has, well, sort of. That has other things, brings in other concepts, but that's sort of the way I work. Now, not all paintings come on that level either. To say that that's the way I deal with every piece of art I do, is foolish. There are paintings that are magic, and there are paintings that are paintings. And not all artists do magic paintings ever. And, some get a few. And the paintings that are magic, I call magic, are paintings that come in spite of you, not because of you. They happen, you couldn't do that again. You could paint, I could paint anything I've ever painted, time and time again. I could paint faces and sit right here and not look at anything. I don't use models. I don't, look at photographs. I don't use anything. But I could paint faces until, hell freezes over. There's no problem. But it doesn't mean that any of those are going to be magic. It's once in a while they happen, and most of the time they don't. That doesn't mean that what you do is not high quality all the time, but, for instance, the Mona Lisa is a magic painting. It's not just a painting. There's a magic, and it's rather inexplicable. You can look at the thing, you just don't know why, but there's something there. The Pietà is the same kind of thing. There are many works of art that artists did, and all of a sudden, there's one that is magic.
Is the specter of a face in Journey's gift conscious or unconscious? It's a small one of your smaller works, and there's a face up in the upper right-hand corner.
No, that's something that just happens in.
That's
There are lots in my work. I seem to somehow, and it may be the way I work or what I do, but I seem to create a kind of, there's an aura around the work that just sort of happens, and I don't do that consciously. Sometimes I have, but like that piece and a couple of others, it just sort of happened, and it just is there. So,
This would be magic, probably.
but that was a very nasty painting. That was a nice piece. that painting, you know, the poster is a real nice poster, but the painting itself is about, I think, 4 foot across and whatever it was down, I don't remember, but that was a real magic painting to work on. Some great things happened with that. I sort of lost track of where I was in the flow. If anybody can pick me up and want to talk.
This is going to be magic for me.
To bring it back down to that mercenary.
Beautiful.
It says to Paul from Frank Howell.
Who's responsible for all that I am and ever will be.
Can you get it on the camera?
What media did you use? This is just a little study of the big print that you're getting. The print is like 18.5 inches by 32. Okay, and all the color plates are done. In fact, they're proofing it today. I'm hoping that by Thursday night we will have a completed proof for 2 or 3 or 4. I'm shooting for 1 for each gallery.
Frank, would you talk a little bit about what you believe about or what the Indians believe about the crows?
Sure, I'll
Because that appears in
I'm going to show you these things. Do you want to go through these one at a time or
Yeah,
just
why
pass
don't
them
you,
around?
this is going to be real important to get it on camera, so zero the camera in on these, and he'll talk about each one and then we'll pass them around.
These are small acrylics. And when you hold them and I pass them around, hold them on the sides, okay, because they're coated and I don't want any of this stuff scratched or anything, and I don't normally do this, but I wanted you to see what's going on. This old woman is kind of fascinating. I get involved with these things, and some people say they're sort of ugly and they sort of get gnarly, but I think they're real important to do every once in a while. This one's rather straight, okay? But you're going to see a range of things that I do in terms of feel and approaches, whether it be, you know, a rather traditional approach to painting, just kind of straight impact stuff, or moving it along to, there, we'll try to get it on here.
Yeah.
Moving it along to, you know, the more ethereal design approaches. Again, this is acrylic. Okay. Let me have all of those. I want to move them and pick them up in an order.
All December's winds and that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't remember. Okay. That's the first one I did in this series. This was the second one I did in this series. And by the way, this is the second print.
Beautiful.
First is the crows.
Beautiful.
And this is a second print, and this is going to be a big print. It's 30 by 30 inches. You know, full bleed. It's not going to have an edge. This one, wherever that one is, that one is has like a 3/4 inch border all the way around, white border, so it can be floated or within a window in the matting and framing, which is important to you. This will be a full bleed, edge to edge. This will probably have a few more feathers that come right down this way, because I've sort of restructured this shape and everything, but basically the colors are the same, so on. The colors in that piece, that study for that litho, are real accurate the way it's going to be. Probably a little bit lighter. You know, that tended to get a little muddy because that was a study that was never intended to be shown. That was just done with some acrylic and Prismacolor, and it's just sort of real gunky, and you know, it's just. But this one is a painting that I did as a study for as a study for the next litho, and I started that yesterday. The title is called Yellowface. Yellowface.
This collection,
I'll put a blanket for a second.
Do my little routine.
this collection is going to be real important for your collectors. If you all listen to this, because if you have a collector that's really into a nice collection, this is going to be 12 pieces. And I don't know what Frank's situation is, but he'll be in Italy for a year, and there won't be anything coming out. There may be some things. There will be? Well, that's good.
I'm going to go to, I didn't even get to tell you, I'm going to go to Portofino and do a series, my first etchings.
Oh, that's exciting.
Okay, the next piece was this, which is also the third litho. Now it's not quite complete because I think I'm going to do some kind of ties and some bead things and something else in here. But it's real close. I'm going to do some other stuff adjustments on this. But I wanted a piece that sort of went along with these other crows. Every time I've done crows, it's like, you know, you're off and running. People like the crows. Some people will say to you, you know, I don't like the crows, especially in that one there. You know, why are they wrapped? Is that blood? Is, you know, they're going to get, some people are going to run scared, okay? But you're going to find many more people that love the crows. And we'll talk about, I'm going to talk about that right after I get done piece. Again, the crows. And I wanted to get a couple of pieces at least that had the IDs with the crows, and we'll pass it around.
That's a beauty there.
And these things, this painting I do not want to go out any place. The next three I'm going to show you are being held back for this show in Cherry Creek, which I don't even know if you know about it. This show that's coming.
December 16th.
There are some that are very, very special to me. That's one in these next two. This one kind of scares Paul a little bit. He likes it, but it's a little bit different, but it's the way I like to work. Okay? It's, in fact, it's the way I'm happiest. When I start getting tired and I start pushing toward the end of the show, things start happening. You've probably had artists tell you this, that, you know, somehow things just begin to click. And I always tend to go toward this much more clean, surreal approach. And this is a very special painting, so it's simply called Red Earring. It's just much more clean and graphic. I'm going to do a 50 by 72 inch painting with this.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's what I'm saying. And people have taste.
It could be any. It could be anyone.
Okay.
Not
One of the
American
things that
Indian.
bothered me about my work, and I'll be really honest with you, is that when I did that past wind show, this is a kind of interesting story, and you'd think that people that are in real authority, real knowledgeable people would understand what I'm doing with my work, but they don't. Oftentimes, imagery gets in the way of seeing what the work's about. When I did that past wind show, they were trying to schedule it at museums and colleges. It was sent off to Arizona State to a man who, he doesn't mind me telling this story because he thinks it's rather funny now, but he was very, very well known. His name is Rudy Turk. He was the director. He's known all over the Southwest. Very important man in the museum and college art programs. I sent him the catalog, and he sent me back a letter, and he said, you know, well, the people that were sending the show, at this time we're just not interested in Mr. Howell's work, as we do not do Indian imagery. Okay, and although the drawing looks nice and all this and that, it's just not the kind of thing that we want to show at the museum, and so on. And I was really disappointed because I thought these are people that are really very knowledgeable, you know, and this show represented such a different thing that, and you'd have to see the book to appreciate the difference, but they're much more ethereal than these even. And so I kind of sat back and I thought, God, there's something wrong. You know, these are Indians and people aren't seeing these. About 3 weeks later, you know, I got a call from Rudy apologizing for what happened with this show. And he said, you know, he picked up these things and, you know, they're really not Indians at all. We're just not dealing with Indian subjects. And he had totally missed it. You know, the whole thing being is that this has happened time and time again. If people can get into it a little bit, it goes beyond just Indian imagery. This big painting, you know, it represents a kind of thing that I'd like to do, is to move away from that kind of dependency. Not that I want to do away with Indian things and that kind of thing, but I want to make sure that people are able to see my work and see what I'm doing. And I like to throw in these other things because I think it's a bit expansive, not only for me, but the spectator. And the last one I just did the other night, and it's exquisite. This is I like my own work. Again, nice. You know, with these, I'm doing a lot of things that are, you know, they're representational. I'll never leave this really fine drawing thing because that's something I have, and I know that not that would be wrong, but expanding the concepts of the figure, stretching and moving around, you know, making use of other things to create.
I guess the color. That's
So when this comes around, you know, take a real good look at this face. These are all acrylics that you're seeing.
You just Prismacolor over it?
No, these are all acrylics. These are just brush. No pencil on these. The only one that was acrylic was that first print study, which was not meant to be a thing to be shown, really.
Which one? Mine? I'm proud of that.
Well, I know it's nice, but it wasn't meant to be as a painting. It was just done differently.
This is why I wanted to print look on your paintings.
I don't understand.
It was a gift. Don't feel cheated.
Could you clarify something for us? Will these be lithos, or are these going to be just for the show, original pieces for the show?
This is a study for one. I will never do a painting that's a litho, okay?
All right.
When I say this is a litho, this is similar. These were done as studies for lithos.
These were, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Not
These are
all
not
of these.
unique
Not that one.
pieces to be
Yes.
sold
That
at
one
some
is.
time? Okay.
That one is. This one
Okay.
is.
Okay.
I mean, all of them are.
All right.
But
Okay.
the litho will be similar to that one. That.
So it is a study for a litho.
Yeah, it was originally as a study for a litho, but it's a unique piece.
Okay.
But I do not set out to reproduce my paintings as lithos.
Good. Wonderful.
How is your painting coming along for you doing for the day? How is it?
It's finished.
Probably the most beautiful thing you've ever seen.
Oh, it was great. You know, I saw the little study and I was interested. It's just wonderful.
Well, if you get over there in the next week or so, we move this meeting over there.
They built the Denver store right outside the door of our new gallery.
You're going to do a promotion, I'm sure.
They
aren't
built
you?
the Denver store right outside your door.
Where our new gallery's going.
It's interesting, you people.
You're going to do a big promotion, I'm sure, at the same time that Denver does their big promotion on that, aren't you?
I don't know. I think so. We'll probably do something.
When are they doing theirs?
April 3rd.
When they
March,
6th.
something is March 1st or 6th or something.
Didn't you say they're going to do their bags, the whole entire promotion, opening of the store is going to be based on it?
For 5 years, their promotion will be based on that work of mine.
And we're having another Frank Howell show.
It's 6 foot by 10 foot. The painting. The triptych, it's just... It's incredible.
It's tubular in the surfing term and awesome in the regular term.
It's turned out to be 6 by 10, you had 4 by 8 pieces of...
Well, no, there was one panel. The outside panels are 3 foot by 6 foot. The center panel is 4 foot by 6 foot.
Frank's working on a large painting like that for our Cherry Creek show.
Right? 6 foot by 10 foot canvas.
Are there any other pieces that people can go view that are hanging somewhere right now in Denver?
Yeah.
You did the one for Eagle Oil or Davis?
No, that was Marvin Davis City Center building.
City Center?
That Eagle.
So there's a piece at the City Center building?
I don't know where it's at though.
Oh, all right.
I don't know. It's a promotion that'll be out. It's an Eagle that I did.
All right.
That one wasn't magic.
Pardon?
That wasn't magic.
No, I mean, I'd never painted a bird in my life, but they just said they wanted a bird, so I thought I'd paint one, and it was real nice. It came out
It
real
was a beautiful painting.
good.
Okay, do you want to talk about this one here and some of the ideas and mysticism on that piece?
Yeah, well, I want to get into this one, the crows.
This one?
Many of the things that I'm doing right now have to do with Plains Indian ideas. You have a print called the Sand Creek Massacre. You know, it's a triptych that has crows in it also. That had to do with a particular incident in southeastern Colorado in 1865. And And that particular print, the story goes of the Sand Creek Massacre is this cavalry unit came swooping down, and it sounded like thunder, came swooping down upon 300 mostly women and children and a few old men.
What is the title of that print?
It was called the Sand Creek Massacre, or the Sand Creek Triptych.
Did I have it here?
Yeah, it's a 3-part piece.
In color?
In color? Yeah.
Okay, 3-part piece.
No, it was a big print. It was the long one with the crows,
the crows
the
look
red
like
ties.
this, the blue with the red on them.
Right.
Oh, okay, all
in one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all in one.
Oh, I don't have it here at the...
It's at Rogers.
Oh, I know which one it is. It's a big
At any rate, the story, I have a little legend that you're all going to receive. In fact, we're going to be printing up a series of these things on each one of the prints that are sort of handout things. They'll just be more or less run off by Pip Printing or somebody on that particular print and all of these new ones. And it talks a little bit about, this thing makes statements about about the history of that. Much of it's left out. The massacre went on anyway. This cavalry unit massacred all of these people, and the idea of the whole print was that the crows were the only witnesses to what happened. The story really gets rather crude and vulgar and ugly and everything else says what happened after that, but the crows then became a very important thing. The crows to the Indians were always very brave because they were always seemed to be on the battlefield first and always be the last to go. That's where they hung out, so to speak. And also they were very swift, so they were recognized as being very swift, very brave, very knowledgeable. They were seeing, they saw everything that went on. So to the shaman, who was the medicine man, if you will, and there were varieties of medicine men. There isn't just one kind. There were all kinds for all kinds of purposes. But the medicine man then would get information from the crows or from the fire. The print we have called Ponies of the Fire, 50 from the Rope. That's the same kind of thing.
Whispers.
Yeah. But the crows then, were message carriers. They knew things. They're very important. Also, the Indians believed that by wearing parts of or a bird or an animal in its entirety, they picked up the characteristics of that animal or bird. And that's the case in this print.
And so the red sash, is it symbolic of the...
Well, the red
death?
sash is symbolic. It's in some respects that red was very important, but in others, the red has to represents trade cloth. It became known as trade cloth. It was a red kind of flannel, very light flannel cloth. And it used to come from the east in huge bolts. I mean, they just got this cloth, they'd ship more of that than anything else out because the Indians loved it. And they'd make it for wraps. They used it as strands. They'd wrap, everything with it. Yeah.
The Indians were unable to get that sort of color through their own dyes. Is that what
Yeah. Well, it was such an intense red. And after a while, things just weren't done that way. I mean, most that we know of the history of the Indians and how things eventually evolved came, after the white man, when a lot of these things came along because it came from the east, they began to use it. And they just were on the move so much, they just didn't do things the way, they could. But a color like that is really not in nature that pure. It's just not.
I don't understand why the birds are wrapped.
They're wrapped to fasten.
That's how
To tie.
they didn't have staplers.
They contain, they're to tie to the figures and to hold them on. They were, they're wrapped for other reasons. You can wrap things within them. You can hold the spirituality. You can hold them from flying, from that spirit flying away. You know, a lot of the things I do, you know, I just sort of feel it and move on with it.
The poetry in that piece is beautiful. Is that yours?
Yeah, I spent more time on the poetry in that than I did the entire drawing. That was a 10-color lithograph on 3 stones.
But it just is.
It's real powerful.
It is. I mean, it just makes the piece everything. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that was the first one that I did that I actually used my own poetry in a lithograph.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an edition of 12 coming out now, a series of 12 prints and 12 love poems that are just like, you know, real light things and sort of very fragmented things, and, you know, some more involved. But I'm not releasing any of those till they're all done, and then we're supposed to do something here on it. There's going to be a book on it and everything else. Any more questions on this? The hand is reaching out for just to be in contact with what's out there. This is a real funny story. R.C. Gorman, we were both working down in Taos, and R.C. had come into my place, and I had a small print shop then. R.C. would go around town. He was always kind of threatened by what was going on there, because at the time I was just really, you know, coming up real fast, and I just never believed in competition with other artists. I just don't go along with that. And I admire R.C. in a lot of ways, but sometimes artists are blind. You know, they just don't. They can't understand why people can't see theirs, but they just can't see beyond their own work. I used to do these Indians with these really hollow eyes, that were very shallow, very dark. I still do this once in a while, and I had very good reasons for all of that. And R.C. came around. He went to the frame shop and he saw this painting of mine, and he looked it over, and the framer said every time he turned around, R.C. was looking over his shoulder at this painting, and he says, well, he says, I guess Howell's done another blind Indian. I thought that's a real fascinating story, because, you know, to me, the idea of the eyes being darkened or the eyes being closed are like, you know, the reason you close your eyes in a kiss, or the reason that you close your eyes in other moments of intensity is that, you know, you're seeing inward. You know, it's and I felt very strongly that that was really important, but R.C. thought that represented a blind Indian, which, of all people, I thought he would understand. But at that time, R.C. was really into his soap operas and bourbon.
He probably thought you didn't know how to paint eyes.
Television.
So I always laughed at that story. We talked about it the last time he was in town, and he laughed a lot. So, any other questions in this? Anything else you want to talk about?
How about feathers? Can you tell us anything?
Can you talk a little bit about this one here?
Well, feathers are real important to me, because that, in all of my work, very little of my work is very stagnant. You know, there's always this kind of movement going in, no matter how design-oriented the piece is. There's always a sense of movement or some kind of thing going on in it. Always a sense of air, of some kind of, whether wind's blowing intensely or whether it's kind of mixed currents and kind of things just all swirling around. And that's the way life is for me. That's the way I believe about all kinds of things. It's like there's just this thing that just sort of goes around me all the time, and it just floats. And feathers, to me, you know, when I paint feathers, and I can paint the best feathers in the world. I mean, I really can paint feathers, but I feel feathers. I don't, you know, when I paint a feather, and these are good feathers, and I wish I don't have any of them, but that that one poster called Symphony. You know, it was the Frank Howell studio show. You know that poster?
Yes.
That has feathers in it. That, you know, they're birds. They're not feathers anymore. They just float. And, you know, the ends of the feathers, everything becomes very lyrical and moving. And you always sense some kind of thing. And to me, that's, you know, that's what I use feathers for. It's how I use them in my work, how I feel about them, and why they're important, because they do create the illusion of these currents, of this floating. And
Can you zero in on that? Really?
That's amazing.
They always seem to have a light. They almost, they glow, almost like a light
Well,
up in.
the way I paint is very, very, very traditional. It's you know, most painters today are very direct, and they really don't understand painting as a technique. I traveled all over Europe just looking at paintings and spent a great deal of time studying painting on my own and a lot of reading. But I paint in a series of glazes, and it's just not direct at all. Most people now, they mix up the color, put it on, and then they're off and running. You know, they go to the next area or whatever. My work, I'll put down, you know, like a cartoon or the sketch in paint, and then I'll glaze. I'll glaze with like a, you know, a bright yellow. Just cover the whole thing. And a glaze then becomes like, what it is a thin, transparent color. And the way you can understand this most simply is if I gave you, you know, each a stack of acetate, you know, blue acetate sheets, okay? And if I put that blue acetate sheet down on top of this, you know, it wouldn't show a great deal, okay? It would maybe give this just a very slight hint of blue. But if I put 2 down, and if I put 3 down, or 4 or 5, or on and on, then we create an illusion of another color entirely. This becomes another thing. You understand? Mm-hmm. And that's what glazes are. And so the colors that I use and the way I achieve that kind of depth and light from way down is that light refracts off the surface in a different way. Like the surface of my paintings, the grounds that I do are like 12 coats of gesso that are all hand done. And the surfaces are very, very important. They're as important as anything I do later.
Frank, I wanted to ask you about the surfaces on your backgrounds on some of those smaller pieces. You got kind of a marble effect on that. How did you go about getting that?
Oh, that's done with, you know, with rags and cloth and you know, it's like I kind of, you know, stipple them. I kind of push it around, and it sounds real simple, but you have to know that relates again to the ground, because that'll vary, you know, and that's how flexible you are. It depends on what kind of surface you're working on. It's very difficult on this kind of paper because it really, it goes in, and there are all kinds of things you have to do to prepare and how you have to work, and it's very, very fast. And then on masonite panels, which I really prefer, I prefer to paint on masonite because it's easier to paint on canvas. You know, to create the subtle changes in tonality that I get in my work on masonite or paper is, I mean, you have to be able to paint, okay? And I like to separate myself from everybody else. I like to make sure, and you can say it's a bit show-offy or whatever, and in fact I admit to that. I know that I can paint and I can draw, and I want that to be seen, so I'll put it on the most difficult surface that I can create. And the most difficult surface I can create is a very smooth surface, because there's no way you can hedge, you know, and fudge anything you can do. There's nothing there to help you. When you're painting a sky or you're painting these subtle transitions on canvas, the very fact that the surface is grainy, it has a kind of edginess to it. As you pull the brush across, if you just pulled it straight across, you're going to create a subtle transition of tones. Because of that thing, it breaks it up into dots and kind of moves it out and out and out, you see. On a smooth surface, that doesn't happen. You have to put it down. You have to, this demonstrates the kind of control, you know, that you have when you work on those kind of surfaces. So you know, in some ways it really is very show-offy, but that's fine. You know, I like to show what I can do.
I really appreciate art, and I think it's wonderful, but one of the things that I really appreciate is the way you use your light on your pieces. I mean, you rarely see that anymore nowadays. People just aren't that concerned with the light in a piece, and it's wonderful to see that.
Well, you know, not everybody should be. I mean, everybody has their own approach.
I realize that. It's just real nice to see it again. We see it so much in the old, you know, pieces.
Well, I believe that people want to be awed when they view art. There are many people that just don't want to be confronted, okay? There are certain art forms that people look at, and all they want to do is look at it and say, you know, this is nice. They want to hang it up because then it looks good on their wall and everything. Other people, you know, want to be a little bit challenged by the work. They want to be confronted by art, and they want it to do something, to stimulate something inside, you know, create. And that's what I call living art. You know, if a piece of art is like a good relationship, if the relationship is healthy and good, then it's a self-generating and feeding thing. You know, you know someone, and because of what they are, you become something else, and because of what you've become because of them, they become something else. And if it's a healthy thing, that's an ongoing thing, and that's the way it is with art. If you look at a piece of work and you see something in it, the more you look at it, the more you grow. The more you grow, you know, the more that piece grows, and so on. And that's when a piece of art lives and lives and on and on. There are other pieces that are just not meant to be that, and not all pieces can be that. That doesn't mean that they have no value. But, you know, to me, I'm a person who likes to be confronted with work, and for a lot of people it's not easy. You know, they avoid it. So then, well, to go back to technique then, where I picked up is we're stacking these pieces of acetate, okay? We're creating a tonal thing over the work. Then what I do is I go back in and put in detail again. Then I glaze again. You know, I may glaze with bright yellow. That'll create a kind of flesh tone. I may then glaze with the blue, which will create the kind of green undertones in flesh. Then I may glaze with umbers, but each time I glaze, go to detail, glaze, go to detail, and back and forth and back and forth. On paintings, you know, such as this, there'll be 48 to 50 glazes in the face and hands, fewer other places. It's a combination of direct painting techniques in these glazes and so on. But the reason the faces and hands have this kind of inner glow is that there's this constant change back and forth. You know, little paintings like that probably have 15 or 20 different glazes.
You always work in acrylics?
No, I work in... I started out as an egg tempera painter. That's all I did for 7 years. And, you know, my favorite artists are Carlos Crivelli and Giannini. They were the early egg tempera painters. They were the first easel painters. Egg tempera was the first kind of easel painting in Italy. And there were very minute faces and, you know, very linear, this kind of thing. So I painted egg tempera, then I moved to oil, then I moved to acrylic, but I've always done oil. So I paint in everything. I do watercolors, oils, acrylics. I don't paint much in egg tempera anymore because I simply don't have time for the alchemy of it all. You know, that's just really difficult to do. I need to paint too many things, and I don't have time to sit there and grind that color and temper my own color and all that. So that's basically the glazing technique. Then my paintings are always finished. I absolutely, totally believe in the artist as an artist craftsman. You will not find a single piece of mine that isn't as sound technically as anything that's ever been done. You know, I mean, I know how to prepare a surface, and I do. I use the best of materials. My canvas is not cotton. My canvas is, you know, Belgian linen. It's $30 a yard. The paper that I use is all 100% rag, pH neutral papers on anything. and they're framed that way and it's done. That's real important to me. I don't think anybody gets anything by getting my name. They get my work and it should be there forever, or until tomorrow.
Do you have any questions, Colin?
No, I think they've really covered everything.
Any questions? I think what Frank Howell says on his paintings, there's a lot more to the painting, just to summarize, than what you're looking at. And I don't know if you can compare Frank to any of the major surrealists, because I think he's as good or better than any artist that's probably alive. Or he's a great artist. He's probably the greatest artist that came to our studio or our office here. And I think 20 years from now, we're all going to sit back and think about this particular meeting. This is real important.
I hope.
Thank you.
Everybody to work.
Anybody that wants to come to that studio, if you want to set that up, Larry Fodor may be here next Wednesday still, and it would be nice if you could come in and see him.
In the background, we're going to discuss some of the things that Frank has done since he was his early childhood. He was born in 1937, in July 31st, 1937, in Sioux City, Iowa. And we're going to take him from his first drawing phase to his military career, his semi-professional and professional baseball career, to his college, and so on. So, Frank, let's start with you. When did you start drawing? When were you?
I started drawing when I was 2 years old.
Did anybody recognize your talents at that time?
Oh yes, everybody thought that I could draw. I had an uncle that could draw, and my father did a little. And I suppose, you know, I could do fairly well.
Okay, you went to junior high at Sioux City, Iowa?
Yeah, junior high and high school in Sioux City.
What happened? You went into the Marines when you were 16 years old. Were you in high school at that time, or were you?
Yes, I was in high school. I was a junior, and I was in trouble a lot just from fighting, and thought I needed discipline, and the way to get it was the Marine Corps, and that worked out to be so.
Did they teach you to be? Did you get very disciplined there?
Well, I was controlled, and it taught me a lot about myself, that I could be what I wanted to be, and that if I wanted to accomplish something, I could do it, and I could do it on my own.
What were you doing in the Marines? What was?
Well, when I started out in my basic training, and what I really wanted to do was become a drill instructor. And it started out that I did extremely well on the rifle range. I fired just a few points lower than the course record at Camp Matthews. So then they sent me off to coach the rifle range at Camp Lejeune. And at that time I was doing a lot of stuff in judo on my own, and that's where I began to instruct. I decided that's what I want to do, so I began to instruct in combat judo and karate in Camp Lejeune. Then I went back to California to Camp Pendleton.
How long were you in the military?
Just short of 4 years.
Then you came out and you finished high school in the military?
Well, I had enough credits that I just came back and took the tests. You know, high school was nothing. Went back and just took some tests and got my degree and entered college.
Mm-hmm. Did you take many art courses in high school or in college?
I took a lot of art courses in high school. I was fortunate to have two very good teachers, and both of whom I'm still in contact. In college, when I went to college, I really didn't study painting. I majored in ceramics and jewelry and phys ed in wrestling program. And
how many years did you wrestle, Frank?
All 4 years.
All 4 years. What weight division?
167, 157, 177.
That's kind of a tough division, isn't it?
Yeah.
How'd you do?
I wasn't that good.
I think you're being modest. Okay, you went, this is the University of Iowa, and then where did you get your master's at?
At the University of Iowa in creative writing.
In creative writing. And was philosophy one of your majors?
Philosophy was a minor.
A minor.
Yeah, and it was just primarily philosophy of aesthetics was a very strong interest. In fact, I ended up teaching that at Morningside College in Iowa.
And you also, poetry was a main interest with yours. Okay, when you got out of college, what did you do at that time? You played semi-professional baseball, and then I guess you went to the main league, didn't you? Or
AAA.
AAA.
Yeah.
So, and how long did you do that, Frank?
Oh, just a little over a year and a half. That wasn't my thing. I just was not a ball player. I think I was meant to be an artist. I was kind of interested in teaching, and that's what I did for quite a few years, almost 11 full years of teaching. I quit teaching just short of 11 years.
During that time, you went to Europe, did you, and study?
Yes. That's where I learned most of what I know about painting, just by traveling around from museum to museum and studying various painters, learning technique, reading whatever I could, talking to people, and that's where I learned the series, the system of glazing that I do. It's very old and traditional techniques.
Who influenced you the most of the European artists?
I don't know. I suppose the person that I'm most fascinated with is an Italian painter, pre-Renaissance painter, in fact, very early easel painter, Cennini. Was a egg tempera painter, and Carlos Crivelli, even more important to me because his style was very linear. They did very minute faces in egg tempera, and extremely detailed things, and I think that was always my interest, was just really, really strong detail, and they impressed me in technique, and so that's where I began to study egg tempera, and I learned a lot about egg tempera just from looking at the paintings. In fact, I remember starting egg tempera painting. When I first started, I painted with egg white because I thought that made the most sense. And it was only, quite a few months later that I discovered that true egg tempera is done with the egg yolk. In fact, the only time the egg yolk or the egg whites were ever used was in the illuminated manuscripts, and that was to create a very glossy, shiny, kind of crystalline feel.
Let me, before you came to Colorado, you were painting, I guess you painted a variety of subjects. Did you have any real interest, that were specific subjects you were painting then?
When I first started painting, I was painting people much like I do now. That was when I was real young. Just, in fact, the latter part of high school, and then when I went into college. And the people were floating, and they were emerging from plants. And it's very interesting, I'm going back to that. In the interim, I guess my main interest was in landscapes.
Do we have any photographs of Frank's landscape, Marty? Why don't you bring that up, and I'll put it on the camera, and we'll just go back and run through that. But continuing on, your Northwestern University was your first exhibit in 1976?
Well, there was a series of exhibits in 1976, a dozen or so, and they were in universities, college museums around the country. That was a traveling exhibit. It was a grant that I received from Denver business people, a part of MCA Corporation, a couple of other things that put together a $50,000 grant for me to do 25 drawings. And they were quite large, and a catalog that went around with it. And then the show was organized to go to all these various places, and part of it was Northwestern and Penn State, Arizona State, Purdue, Iowa,
Harper College,
yeah,
Arizona State, Iowa State, Albright
the museum, and a number of places. It traveled all over for several years.
that got you a lot of recognition at that time, or you
Yes.
already had the recognition? In 1976, I understand you were selling a lot of paintings, everything you could paint.
Yeah, everything I could paint, that's for sure. And this show represented a rather dramatic change in my work too. So there were lots of things that happened.
Okay. I'm going to focus in on one of your earlier paintings, so the camera is going to be bouncing around a little bit, and for the viewing audience, they'll have to understand that this is non-professional. Okay, this is one of the landscapes, and unfortunately the camera is not giving us what we're looking at here at the studio. It's an absolutely magnificent painting. When did you paint, or were painting in this style, Frank?
I think it was 1978.
You still paint in this style. It's just that I don't mean that you got out of the style. You still do things like this. But this is one of the few paintings that you've kept for yourself. Is that correct?
Yes.
How many in this series, when you were painting landscapes like this, have you done?
I think I came back to this after a number of years and decided I wanted to do this landscape show just to see where I, would pick up when I left off. And it was a highly successful show. I did 43 or 44 paintings and sold all but I think 4 or 5, and kept some and of those, and it was very successful.
And then you started, when you went from the landscape doing this, you got into more of a mysticism type art. I think that probably is close to being correct. There is mysticism to your art. That was when, 79, maybe 78?
Oh, no, it was earlier than that.
It was earlier than that?
Yeah, these landscapes were done. I'd already gone back to painting, I was painting people, painting Indian subjects in 1973. This series of landscapes were just things that I wanted to do on my own, just for my own satisfaction. And it was kind of an interim thing in 1978. It was just a show I wanted to do as a one show only. I haven't painted a landscape since. And
you're going to paint one for me, though.
Maybe.
Please. Okay. I'm going to, as we go forward with this, I'm going to attempt to zero in on some of the earlier paintings, and the colors are not going to be exact because we have non-professional equipment here. But this piece that we have focused in, that's from Pasquin. Is that one of the drawings from the exhibition? And you had how many drawings in that exhibition?
25 drawings.
Do you have any more drawings here, Marty?
No.
That he's not. This is one. Explain what your feeling was when you did the Pasquin's drawing, or the series of drawings.
Well, basically, when I left landscape painting the first time, I wanted to paint people, and I painted them rather traditionally. And if you pull up that next one, Marty, the rancher, it's right under. No.
I know where it is. Go ahead and talk.
It's right there above. Just saw it. It's under the second and third one. Just had it. When I first left landscape painting, and I was painting in a very, very tight. That's a little out of focus.
I know it is, but I don't know exactly what to do about it.
Just back it up a bit.
Okay.
Well, just a little more. Okay, right there. The painting is a little out of focus, but and you can't really see the detail. But this is a very, very representational kind of painting that I did. Very traditional approaches, and I painted in all these blurs and everything to help create this exciting action.
It's too bad I can't get it into focus because
It really is too bad. You can't get it into focus.
Both for you and for me. Let me see. I'll get this worked out here. Just hang on just 1 second here.
As I was saying, when I first left landscape painting, this is the kind of painting I was doing. Very straightforward, traditional kinds of paintings of people, Indian people from the Pueblo and so on. And as I the longer I painted, the more interested I became in content, or more spiritual quality in the work. And I went from that to the next painting, which, you know, begins to show a movement away from a straight kind of paint to a much more emotional, spiritual kind of feel. And from that, I progressed to the next approach, and I think, you know, you can begin to see the changes in the work. Oh, it's right there. Yeah. You know, still retaining much of the representational qualities in the work, but the overall painting and movement within the work, creating a kind of pyramid and moving upward and outward from the work, up from the center. And gradually then I came to the much more spiritual qualities in the work, like the Past Winds piece that we had up. This one happens to be an oil that shows the figure changing into clouds. And that was basically the next step. I began to create these cloud forms, very spiritual kinds of things. And then from that, I began to go to things which became a more overall kind of quality, and the head began to dissipate into clouds. The form became sort of lost, and basically what I was getting into was a much more spiritual content in the work. If you're familiar with Navajo legend, for instance, they believe that we're currently living in a fifth world, a world of a physical being, and eventually we evolve into a much more spiritual being. And basically what I paint is that transition, where we're evolving from a physical being into the cosmos, into this spiritual existence. And that's why all of my paintings, or the vast majority of the paintings, feel as though they're sort of moving skyward, and things begin to go into these clouds or into other forms.
I think if we put them right in the center, Marty, I'll get the best shot of. When was this painting here done, Frank?
Oh, that was done probably 2 years ago.
Okay. That's just kind of, we'll just put them in the center, just pull them out.
Yeah, that's a watercolor.
Okay, this one. When was this one done?
Probably, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
You know, I'm getting my best shot, I think, when we put them over this way. Whoops. Get in front of the camera. Are all of these pieces sold, Frank? Because I haven't
Yes,
seen any.
all of these are sold.
Okay. When was this one done, we're looking at now?
2 years ago. Yeah, 1980. It was for the studio show here.
Was that an acrylic or?
Yes, that was an acrylic on paper. I believe it was quite large. It was about 30 by 40.
That's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it was called Winter, I believe. I'm not sure.
Okay, when was this one done, Frank?
Oh,
2 years.
maybe 3 years.
79.
What size was it?
That one was 30 by 70, 60 something.
Was it 82? What size was that one?
24 by 48, I believe, 24 by 50 something.
I'm going to bring in the zoom on a little bit so you can see the detail. Seems like when you bring the zoom in, the color turns on a little bit better. Oops, no, I really got it on. Most of these paintings sold like in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado.
No, many of them sold right here in Denver. In fact, most of them we're looking at are sold in and around Denver, I think. Yeah, this is a great painting.
What are some of the collections your pieces were in, Frank?
Over Museum, the Bell Telephone, Execicon Corporation. I don't know, Mark, I don't know all that stuff. The Denver, of course.
Okay. Go ahead.
I don't know.
Well, as I back up, the color comes clearer in as I pull it closer. And I think, where did this painting come from?
That's owned by someone here in Denver.
It is, huh?
Yeah.
What was the size of that?
That painting is, it's just a bit smaller than that. I'd say it was about 14 or 15 inches wide and across and 12 inches high, 12 inches high.
Do you have any other ones you want to show?
Posters.
Okay, show this one here. This is an especially good piece. Can you talk about this one, Frank?
This is a 60 by 72 inch painting. It's called Elk Greener Chant, and it's a song about. It's a shame that it takes on the characteristics of the elk and has all of the interests of the elk. The leaves that you see are herbs. And what the Indians would do would follow the elk around and see what they ate because they were so strong and healthy. And they felt as though if they ate those things, they too would be strong and healthy. Much of the Indian belief centered around, the characteristics of birds or animals, and they liked whatever they liked. They tended to emulate or look after, and that's why they would wear feathers or parts of an animal, such as horns or antlers or pieces of fur or whole wings or anything else. Or whole birds. They tended to think that they would take on the characteristics of that animal. For instance, the crow being very silent and swift and always seemed to be in the battlefield first and last to leave. Therefore, they were very courageous. Because they were so dark, they seemed to be a kind of mysterious animal or bird, and much of these things they really thought were very strong characteristics.
When did you really get involved or get really interested in? You had friends when you went in the service. You did go in the service. You had friends that were Indians.
Yeah, I went with 5 Indians from the Rosebud. Friends of mine through school. I learned a little from them, but primarily I'm not so much interested in very much factual information about the Indian as I am a more of kind of a spiritual thing, and that is a kind of continuity about life and what you do. To the Indian, religion and philosophy and everyday life were inseparable. Everything seemed to flow one into the other. It was all a part of things, and I really get that into my work, I think. The idea of, animals or people, and they flow in from the earth into the sky, and that's my basic interest in painting. That's what I try to get into the work.
Okay, now I'm going to take a real short break here, and I'm going to have Marty read some of the credits and the shows that you had, and then we're going to get back and talk about some of the posters. is Frank's secretary or right-hand man at the studio. Why don't you read through the credits that Frank has gone through? And while we're doing this, we have a poster of a painting that Frank did. When did you do this painting, Frank? 80, 81?
No, it was before that, 1979, 78. This is owned by Century Bank here in town. This is in the boardroom.
I've seen the painting. It's a beautiful painting. But Marty, go ahead and read some of the credits of Frank, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the things.
Okay, do you want me to go through the shows that he's
Yeah,
had?
starting with the shows and go forward.
Okay, shows started in Gallery A in Taos, New Mexico, and he had shows there for 3 years, in Carlson Low in Taos through 75, at Columbia Savings. Had the exhibition of Past Winds, and then another show of his in 75 and 76. Breckenridge Galleries, which Frank did start when he came to Breckenridge in 1970. He went back in 76 through 82 and had shows there, and in Carlson Alexander here in Denver. Wagner Galleries in Austin, Texas. O'Mara Gallery in Santa Fe. Execucom Corporation in Texas. Kaufman Galleries in Houston. Gallery 26 East in Oklahoma. Gallery Alina in Newport Beach, California. K. Phillips Gallery here in Denver. Putney Gallery in Aspen. Gallery 1 in Denver. Master Editions. In publications, he was featured in High Country magazine. He illustrated a book with Nancy Wood, her poetry entitled Many Winners. There's a catalog of his drawings of Past Winds. He's also featured in Artist of the Rockies, Southwest Art, Colorado Magazine, Art Voices South. He was in Who's Who in American Art in 1976 on. He was featured in Making a Living in Fine Arts. Curtis Casewit used much of Frank's career in his documenting how to make a living in fine arts. He was commissioned to do paintings for the KRMA Public Television, Morningside Public Library in Sioux City, Iowa, Breckenridge Company in Breckenridge, Colorado, Art Associates in Denver, City Center 4 Office Complex, Urban Investment here in Denver, and most recently the Denver Dry commissioned him to do a 6-foot by 10-foot triptych for their new store. Execucom Corporation in Austin, Texas has used several of his paintings for their offices. Documental profiles of Mr. Howell were in Insight into an Artist in Austin, Season Tickets, KRMA. That was a feature when he was their featured patron artist for their auction. First Saturday, he was in the news, KMGH television, and Denver Now here in 1975.
Okay, last year you did a benefit with Channel 6, a fundraiser. Can you put that poster up, Marty? I'll see if I can get a little bit better shot of this, but you did a painting, and was a painting donated along with the posters?
Yes.
And my understanding from the people at Channel 6, it was the all-time largest fundraiser that they had from any one person. Is that correct? They sold how many $1,000s worth of posters? Do you remember, Frank?
There's upwards of 23,000 and still selling.
The posters?
Yes. And the painting was valued at $5,500 and sold for $8,000 at the auction. There was more response on this particular painting than anything they've done. No one single person has generated this much on a piece of art for them.
According now, Frank, recently one of your pieces was purchased by the Vanderbilts.
Well, it wasn't the Vanderbilts, it's the relatives of the Vanderbilts. It was the museum in Vermont, the Shelburne Museum. And I don't remember the name of the man that came through, but he had purchased 4 paintings, and mine was the 5th for a brand new western wing in this museum. The paintings that he had purchased were a Bierstadt, huge Bierstadt, a Andrew Wyeth, a Remington, a Russell, and mine. That's 5.
Okay, was this a painting that we have the poster of right here?
Yes, that's the painting. It's called Elkhorn and Herbs. And because I can't read, Marty will read.
Okay, you wrote a write-up on this, and you do a lot of poetry, and Marty, let me see if I can swing the camera over here. Maybe we can
No,
get it.
don't.
You don't want to be on camera?
I don't.
Sure, she asked me.
No, I don't.
Okay, go ahead and read that, Marty. Just be comfortable.
Often in the camps of the Ogallala Sioux, the fire of the sunrise from the east or the fire of the sunset from the west would begin a period of intense pursuit of visions by the shamans or medicine men. It was during this period that they would begin to build a sweat hut or lodge, a small construction out of willows. They would bend them around and cover them with hides. Inside, they would build a fire with rocks, and water was heated to create steam, a very strong steam bath. With them, they would take the parts of animals such as hooves, horns, hair, and pouches of herbs. These were the particular had high personal medicinal value and were felt to give the greatest contact with the spirits. Through this intense physical situation, they would become even to an almost point of delirium, and they would sprinkle these parts into the fire and create aromas. In the case of elkhorn and herbs, it was believed that herbs of the forest and the elk ate them were extremely powerful and had very high medicinal potential. They would take these herbs along with parts of the horns into the hut and sprinkle them into the fire, thus the title Elkhorn and Herbs. In the case of illness of someone in the village, a warrior or even a shaman himself, the herbs were thought to provide a cure. They would either sprinkle them into the fire or eat them, a variety of possibilities, or a combination to pursue a vision for health. In the case of elkhorn and herbs, they would search out the herbs for medicinal purposes as well as visionary purposes for a greater hunt. The mixture was sprinkled into the fire and the vision was there in the sweat hut. The fire of the sun, either in the morning or the afternoon, was there. Out of this trance came, from the fire, the images of elk came. This was to lead them, and the visions gave them where the elk were, and they could go forth and find them for a greater hunt.
Do what you're doing. I'm
Don't be...
All right, now it's doing.
They're ahead by 15.
Now you're working on a mylar for a lithograph, Frank?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to do a positive working plate. And I've been experimenting with that. Basically what that is, I draw on the mylar, then expose the plate to light. Light passes through this and exposes the plate. Then we take the plate, process it downstairs, and roll it up and print.
How long have you worked on this particular lithograph?
I've been working on this drawing for 3 weeks. Mostly at home, and I'm adding a little something on the side of it that this plant form. This are you recording?
Well, I'm recording some of this, yeah.
This is a whole new suite that no one really knows about. This was meant to be kind of a real exciting thing. This is going to be an addition of 125 prints and then 75 suites. There'll be 6 prints in the suite. And there are and they're in about 6 colors by the time I get done. This is the first stage of it. You see, actually when this is done, this image is moved over on the paper and this flower that I'm drawing, I don't know, you can't, the camera won't pick it up, but inside this flower is a tiny fetus, which is exactly like this form here. You can see the white hair in the face. The whole idea of this is, this is a book on a genesis of my own ideas, and that is that from the earth a plant form came, and in this flower were the eggs or the seed of life, and the sun fertilized this plant, this bud, and thus began man. And the winds come, and the winds blow the seeds, and those seeds impregnate other plants or other earths, and the sun fertilizes that, and so man begins to populate the earth, and that's the whole concept of this suite. There'll be a series of 6 drawings and all of these kinds of things, some with more landscape feel. It's kind of an interesting approach in lithography, because it's going to be, as you can see, a rather formal kind of approach, but on the side will be these forms which more fully illustrate some of the ideas, plus a very sketchy, loose kind of thing. So you're playing off of a very formal and a very loose kind of tension in the work, and it's very exciting to me. In this suite, there'll be basically 12 pages, 6 of which are images like this, as you see. There'll be this is the first in the series. I've got the second one started. Then along with that, there'll be a page that there'll be copy for this image, and I wrote the first copy, and it will be those pages will be silk screened and have a very high feeling off the paper. They'll be printed very thickly so that you get a very tactile sense, and they'll have a washing behind them like this, and the first letter will be like almost like an old text. It'll be fancy, but it'll have this litho quality within the letter, and the first letter of each of these pieces that I write. And the first one, based on this image, is goes as follows. At the edge of the wind, out of the darkness of beginnings, the promises that were only promises now flower from the fertile sun. And that's the beginning of the suite. And each one will have its own copy. And they'll be packaged in a kind of box or bound book kind of form, but they...
One Day at a Time was recorded live on tape before a studio audience.